Striking dock workers plan to march on Cheung Kong Center tomorrow. Many injured or killed in fertilizer plant explosion in Texas. And a search continues for leads in the Boston bomb attack probe.
Good evening. A new twist today to the strike by dock workers, now in its fourth week. One of the contractors involved in the dispute, Global Stevedoring Service, says it's going out of business at the end of June. Dock workers and unionists, meanwhile, plan to stage a march at Cheung Kong Center tomorrow evening and are urging people from all walks of life to take part. Nyok Kang reports.
Striking dock workers continue to direct their anger at Hong Kong's richest man, Li Ka-shing, whose business empire includes the port operator, Hong Kong International Terminals. Having failed so far to get its attention, despite their protests at Cheung Kong Center, they marched to Hutchison House, also part of Li's business empire. They demand dialogue with HIT. Unionists are also rallying those from outside their trade to join them in their fight by staging a march around Cheung Kong Center at 7 p.m. tomorrow.
We hope that all Hong Kong people will come here tomorrow night time to join with dock workers.
Australian dockers in Hong Kong have pledged their support.
Australian maritime workers are not going to stand idly by and see these workers getting treated like scum. We say to Mr. Li, you have to involve yourself. Stop hiding behind your subcontractor. Flush yourself out. Bring yourself out in your millionaire state and talk to these workers and give them the dignity they deserve.
Li spent the morning at his golf club but refused to comment as he loves. In a new twist today, one of the contractors involved in the labor dispute, Global Stevedoring Service, says it's going out of business. The firm says 75% of its staff are on strike. Since there's no date scheduled for further dialogue, and Global Stevedoring Service cannot afford the workers' demand for a 20% pay rise, the company will fold at the end of June. HIT expressed regret over the announcement and said it would take measures to minimize the impact on the container terminal's operations. Striking dock workers say the closure will not stop them in their fight. The union says about 400 workers continue to go on strike, and they are planning to hand out money from the strike fund for the sixth time tomorrow. Nyok Kang, TV News.
Overseas, and a massive explosion at a fertilizer plant in Texas has injured more than 160 people and killed an unknown number of others. The powerful blast flattened nearby buildings and destroyed or severely damaged others across a wide radius. Local officials say it will be several hours before the full extent of the disaster becomes clear. The moment curiosity turned to terror. Amateur video captured the 8 p.m. blast at the fertilizer plant in West near Waco, revealing the shocking power of the explosion that's devastated the small town of 2,700 people. 21-year-old Eric Perez was playing basketball at a nearby school when the fire started at about 6:30 p.m. local time. Police warned them to move back, and they were watching the fire from the back of a truck.
There was a giant force of pressure just pushing me back, and there's shrapnel flying everywhere from the explosion.
A spokesman for the Texas Department of Public Safety said an unknown number of people were killed in the massive explosion.
Right now, we have a tremendous amount of injuries, probably over 100 injuries at this time. We do have confirmed fatalities. The number is not current yet. It could go up by the minute.
A number of volunteer firemen who were fighting the original fire remain unaccounted for. Wilson said at least 133 elderly people were evacuated from a nursing home situated near the blast site, many of them in wheelchairs. He also described an apartment block that was now just a skeleton. An emergency triage centre was set up on a sports field to deal with the huge number of people needing treatment for a variety of blast-related injuries. Other officials said it will be some time before authorities know the full extent of the loss of life and damage from the blast that was heard up to 75 kilometers away.
I just talked to my commander who is on the ground there in the scene. He's telling me that he is seeing extreme devastation in homes, in some of the businesses. They are still getting injured folks out, and they are evacuating people from their homes. At this point, we don't know a number that have been killed. I will confirm there have been fatalities. I think we will see those fatalities increase as we get towards the morning.
Emergency services say the fire that continues to smoulder still poses a threat to the community. They've expressed concerns over the possibility of an explosion in a second fertilizer tank damaged in the earlier blast and the spread of hazardous fumes and chemicals.
Turning to Boston Marathon bombings in the United States, federal, state and local authorities are meticulously studying videos and photographs taken at the scene of the blasts in the hope of finding out who carried out this terror attack. Sonia Artero reports.
Every inch of the back-to-back bomb sites that ended the Boston Marathon in a bloody massacre is being scrutinized with a fine-tooth comb. Police forensics teams are picking up every clue that will help lead them to who was behind the attacks that left 3 dead and more than 170 injured. One law enforcement official earlier stated that a suspect was in custody, but the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston dispute that. Solid evidence that has turned up is a piece of circuit board and a pressure cooker lid that are believed to be parts of one of the bombs. And there is also this key evidence about a possible suspect.
A suspect is seen dropping a bag near the point of the second explosion and heading off, and there's been a confirmation of a description of someone leaving the scene.
But it's still not enough. Authorities continue to plead for the public to come forward with photos, videos, or any information that might help. As a former longtime senator representing Massachusetts, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry expressed shock during a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing.
It's impossible for me to express my sadness and my anger, frankly, over those terrible events. It's just hard to believe that a Patriots' Day holiday, which is normally such a time of festivity, is turned into bloody mayhem.
During that mayhem, Carlos Arredondo was photographed tending to the severe wounds of 27-year-old Jeff Bauman. Bauman was so badly injured, both his legs had to be amputated. Having lost one son to the war in Iraq and another who committed suicide over the loss of his brother, Arredondo remains gutted. But rushing to the aid of others makes Arredondo a living reminder of both the horror and bravery witnessed in Monday's double bombing. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
The FBI has arrested a Mississippi man for allegedly sending letters that were believed to contain the deadly poison ricin to President Barack Obama and 2 other officials. Even though the ricin scare hit Washington right after the Boston bombings, authorities say the incidents are not connected. The one letter addressed to Obama never reached the president because it was detected and quarantined at a mail screening facility in Tennessee. Still, a rash of suspicious letters and packages disrupted the U.S. Capitol all day yesterday, causing the evacuation of 2 Senate buildings. At least 2 of the letters included the phrase, "To see a wrong and not expose it is to become a silent partner to its continuance." They were signed, "I am KC and I approve this message." Officials say the suspect, Paul Kelvin Curtis, is an Elvis Presley impersonator who was jailed several times on charges of harassment and stalking. The United States Senate has rejected a plan to expand background checks for gun buyers. That deals a sharp blow to President Barack Obama's campaign to curb gun violence in the wake of the Newtown, Connecticut school massacre. Alan Buckney reports.
The amendment was voted down despite emotional pleas from the families of victims and the support of more than 80% of the American people. Democrat Joe Manchin of West Virginia was one of the senators who spearheaded the negotiations.
If you want to remember those 20 babies, beautiful children, and the 6 brave teachers, and you want to honor the most courageous family members I've ever met in my life, please consider you should vote for this bill.
But opponents of the background checks and restrictions on assault weapons said the proposals are an example of government overreach that would infringe on the constitutional right to bear arms.
This is a slippery slope of compromising the Second Amendment, and you go down that road, you're going to find it easier to compromise other things in the Bill of Rights.
The vote of 54 to 46 fell 6 short of the 60% needed for the amendment to clear the Senate. A visibly infuriated President Barack Obama surrounded himself with the parents of the victims.
So all in all, this was a pretty shameful day for Washington. But this effort is not over. I want to make it clear to the American people. We can still bring about meaningful changes that reduce gun violence, so long as the American people don't give up on it.
But it's still unclear where the White House and its allies of gun control can go from here. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
And still to come in the news. Musharraf escapes from Pakistan court arrest order. Changes to the senior secondary school curriculum. And ICAC expenses under fire from the Director of Audit.